The internet doesn't sleep, and last night, it absolutely exploded. Just when fans thought the love and hip-hop universe had finally gone quiet, a single claim lit a match that set social media on fire. Timelines flooded, group chats buzzed, comment sections turned into war zones. And at the center of it all stood one name that carries weight, power, and legacy: Mona Scott Young. It started with a video. Grainy, emotional, posted late enough to feel intentional. Jasmine, voice shaking, eyes locked on the camera, dropped allegations so bold that fans replayed the clip again and again just to make sure they heard her right. Names were implied, motives were questioned, and the unthinkable was suggested: that the woman behind the empire had crossed a line no one dared accuse her of before. Within minutes, the hashtag was trending. Within hours, blogs were calling it the biggest shakeup in love and hip-hop history. Fans were shocked, emotions ran high, and nobody knew what was true anymore. For years, love and hip-hop Atlanta has thrived on chaos, heated arguments, broken friendships, betrayals caught on camera. But this time, this wasn't cast-on-cast drama. This wasn't a reunion stage blow-up. This was a challenge to the throne itself. And the question echoing across the internet was simple but dangerous: would Mona respond, or let the storm consume everything she built? As the clip went viral, former cast members chimed in with cryptic emojis and side-eye comments. Fans split into camps, some demanding accountability, others defending Mona with ride-or-die loyalty. Industry insiders whispered that phones were ringing non-stop behind the scenes. Contracts were being reread, old footage was being dissected frame by frame. The family was left divided, and the fandom even more so. Then came the silence. No tweets, no statements, no carefully worded PR response. Just hours of nothing, until suddenly, sources claimed Mona was done playing nice. Rumors swirled that she was preparing to shut it all the way down, once and for all. And when that response finally hit, let's just say, it changed everything. So what really happened behind closed doors? What did Jasmine know, and why speak now? And how far is Mona Scott Young willing to go to protect her legacy? Stay right here, because this story is only getting started, and trust us, you're not ready for what comes next. Eyes. The shockwaves from Jasmine's viral video were still rippling when the phones started buzzing behind the scenes, and it felt like the entire love and hip-hop ATL universe was holding its breath at the same time. Jasmine's words hung heavy in the air, looping endlessly across blogs and reaction videos, her tearful face frozen in thumbnails as fans tried to decode every blink and pause. She had said just enough to set the internet on fire but not enough to fully explain herself, and that uncertainty was driving everyone wild. People were shocked, emotions ran high, and speculation turned into accusation within hours. Some fans swore they had seen the signs for years, others accused Jasmine of clout chasing, and still others wondered why now, why this moment, why this timing. Inside a quiet office miles away from the noise, Mona sat back in her chair, staring at her phone as notifications stacked up faster than she could clear them. Assistants hovered nervously near the door, whispering to each other, afraid to interrupt. Mona's face was calm, almost unreadable, but those who knew her well could tell something was brewing beneath the surface. This wasn't her first controversy, but this one felt different. This time, the accusations weren't coming from a rival producer or a disgruntled blogger. They were coming from someone who had once begged for a seat at her table, someone who had benefited from the platform she built. And that betrayal cut deeper than anything trending on social media. She knew exactly what she was doing, Mona finally said, breaking the silence. Her voice was low, controlled, but sharp. She pressed record knowing the internet would do the rest. One assistant shifted uncomfortably, asking if they should draft a statement. Mona shook her head slowly. Not yet, let them talk. Outside that office, however, the talking had turned into shouting. Group chats among cast members were exploding, old alliances were being questioned, and former friends were suddenly picking sides. Some reached out to Jasmine privately, offering support. Others sent messages to Mona, pledging loyalty and insisting they never believed a word of it. Jasmine, meanwhile, was riding a wave of attention she claimed she never wanted. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing either, but unlike Mona's, hers was filled with mixed reactions. Strangers flooded her DMs with heart emojis and threats in equal measure. She sat on her couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching reaction videos dissect her every sentence. Maybe I said too much, she whispered to herself, then shook her head. No, they needed to hear it. Her sister, pacing nearby, wasn't so sure. You opened a door you can't close, she warned. Once you say something like that, there's no going back. Jasmine snapped back that she was tired of being quiet, tired of feeling used, tired of watching others get opportunities she felt were promised to her. The family was left divided, unsure whether to comfort her or brace for the fallout. By the next morning, blogs were reporting exclusive sources and insiders with wildly different stories. One claimed Mona was furious and ready to sue. Another insisted she was laughing it off, confident the truth would win. Fans argued in comment sections, tagging cast members and demanding answers. "Where's Mona now?" one comment read. "Why so quiet?" another asked. Silence, in this universe, felt louder than any clapback. It only fueled the fire. The more Mona said nothing, the more people assumed the worst, and Jasmine's claims took on a life of their own, morphing with each retelling. Behind the scenes, tensions were spilling into real-life confrontations. A longtime cast member ran into Jasmine at a studio and didn't bother with pleasantries. "You really went there," she said, arms crossed. Jasmine shot back that she was done protecting people who never protected her. Voices rose, producers stepped in, and within minutes, someone had leaked word of the argument online. Fans were shocked all over again. Emotions ran high as clips and quotes circulated without context, painting Jasmine as either a brave truth-teller or a bitter opportunist, depending on who you asked. Mona finally convened a private meeting, calling in a handful of trusted confidants. "We need to decide how to handle this," she said, folding her hands on the table. One advisor suggested a calm, factual statement. Another pushed for a more aggressive response, warning that letting rumors fester could damage the brand. Mona listened, nodding slowly, then leaned forward. "I didn't build this by panicking," she said, "and I'm not about to let someone rewrite history because they're unhappy." Still, even she couldn't ignore the knot forming in her stomach. This wasn't just business, it was personal. As days passed, Jasmine's confidence began to waver. The initial rush of support gave way to exhaustion. She replayed her own video, noticing cracks in her voice she hadn't heard before. "Do you think I messed up?" she asked her sister late one night. There was a long pause before the answer came. "I think you told your truth," her sister said carefully. "But the world doesn't always care about truth. It cares about drama." That realization hit hard. Jasmine had wanted validation, maybe even an apology, but what she got instead was a battlefield. Then came the first real sign that Mona was done staying silent. A single post appeared on her social media, vague but pointed, talking about loyalty, hard work, and the danger of confusing opportunity with entitlement. No names were mentioned, but everyone knew who it was about. Fans dissected every word, screenshots spread like wildfire, and suddenly the narrative began to shift. Some who had supported Jasmine started questioning her motives. "If this is true, why not say it when it happened?" they asked. Others doubled down, accusing Mona of gaslighting and using her power to intimidate. Jasmine watched the post go viral, her heart racing. "She's talking about me," she said, panic creeping into her voice. "She's trying to make me look ungrateful." Her phone buzzed again, this time with messages from people urging her to respond. "Don't let her control the story," one text read. Jasmine stared at the screen, torn between fear and defiance. She knew whatever she did next would either solidify her stance or destroy it completely. As the night wore on, Mona sat alone again, scrolling through comments, seeing her name dragged into debates she never asked for. She sighed, closing her eyes briefly. "They think they know me," she murmured. In that moment, the weight of years in the industry pressed down on her. She had seen stars rise and fall, friendships turn into feuds, truth twisted into headlines. But this time, the stakes felt higher. This wasn't just about a show or a storyline. It was about legacy, control, and who gets to tell the story. Somewhere across town, Jasmine hit record again, staring into the camera with red-rimmed eyes. She hadn't decided what she would say yet, only that she couldn't stay silent anymore. As the red light blinked, signaling the start of another video, both women stood on opposite sides of a line that had already been crossed, neither fully aware of how far this drama was about to go. The moment Jasmine uploaded that second video, the energy shifted completely. It wasn't polished, it wasn't rehearsed, and that's what made it dangerous. Her voice cracked as she spoke, eyes darting away from the lens like she was bracing for impact. She didn't name names outright, but she didn't have to. Everyone already knew who she was talking about, and within minutes, fans were shocked all over again. Emotions ran high as people argued over whether this was courage or self-destruction unfolding in real time. Some praised her for standing her ground, others begged her in the comments to stop before it got worse. Inside the industry, panic was setting in. Producers started making quiet calls, checking contracts, revisiting old emails, and trying to figure out how much damage control would be needed if this kept escalating. One former cast member laughed bitterly during a phone call, saying, "This is what happens when you mix ego with opportunity." Another wasn't laughing at all, warning that lines were being crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. The family was left divided once again, not just Jasmine's, but the larger love and hip-hop family that had grown used to drama, just not this kind. Mona watched the second video without blinking, her jaw tightening with every sentence. When it ended, she exhaled slowly and set the phone down. "So this is the route she wants to take," she said to no one in particular. A trusted colleague asked if she was angry. Mona paused, then shook her head. "No," she replied. "I'm disappointed. There's a difference." But disappointment, in this world, could be just as lethal as anger. She knew that every second she waited gave Jasmine more room to shape the narrative, and that was something she wasn't willing to allow much longer. Meanwhile, Jasmine's support system began to crack under the pressure. Friends who had cheered her on at first now started asking uncomfortable questions. "Do you have proof?" one asked cautiously. Another warned her that powerful people don't lose quietly. Jasmine snapped that she didn't owe anyone receipts for her pain, but later that night, alone in her room, doubt crept in. She replayed old memories, conversations that had once felt validating now tinged with resentment. "Was I naive," she whispered, "or was I manipulated?" The answer changed depending on her mood, and that instability only made things harder. Online, the narrative grew messier by the hour. Fans dug up old clips, pausing scenes and pointing out moments they claimed now made sense. "Look at her face here," one post read. "You can tell something was wrong." Others countered that this was revisionist history, accusing Jasmine of rewriting the past to fit her current storyline. Emotions ran high in comment sections as strangers argued like they were personally involved. People picked sides with alarming intensity, and the family was left divided between loyalty and outrage. Then, without warning, a well-known blogger dropped an alleged exclusive, claiming to have spoken directly to Mona. The article suggested that Jasmine had been difficult behind the scenes for years, often missing opportunities and blaming others for her own shortcomings. The internet latched onto it instantly. Jasmine read the article in disbelief, her hands shaking. "That's not true," she insisted to her sister, tears forming. "She's trying to destroy me." But whether the claims were true or not almost didn't matter anymore. Perception was everything, and the perception was starting to tilt. Mona's team advised her to go further, to lay out a clear timeline and set the record straight. Still, she hesitated. Every move felt like a chess piece being placed under a microscope. Finally, she agreed to a controlled response, but not a full interview. Instead, she released a carefully worded statement emphasizing professionalism, gratitude, and boundaries. Again, no names were mentioned, but the subtext was unmistakable. Fans were shocked by how calm it sounded, how unbothered she appeared. Some took it as confidence. Others saw it as calculated coldness. Jasmine felt cornered. The more composed Mona seemed, the more erratic Jasmine feared she looked. Messages from fans turned harsher, accusing her of clout chasing and playing the victim. "I thought they were on my side," she said softly, staring at her phone. Her sister reminded her that the internet's loyalty is fickle, but that didn't make it hurt less. Emotions ran high as Jasmine questioned whether speaking out had been worth the cost. Behind closed doors, tensions reached a boiling point when word spread that Mona was considering addressing the situation on camera. Not as a dramatic confrontation, but as a final word. "If she does that," one insider warned Jasmine, "it's over." Jasmine's heart sank. She knew Mona's voice carried authority, and once she spoke directly, many would accept her version as fact. Desperation set in, and with it, a dangerous idea began to form. Late one night, Jasmine reached out to someone she hadn't spoken to in years, a former associate who had been around during her early days. "I need you to be honest with me," Jasmine said during the call. "Did you ever feel like things weren't right?" There was a long silence before the person answered, choosing their words carefully. "This industry isn't fair," they said, "but fairness and wrongdoing aren't always the same thing." That ambiguity didn't give Jasmine the reassurance she wanted, but it fueled her determination to keep going. As dawn broke, both women prepared for their next moves, aware that the storm was far from over. Mona, steady and strategic, was ready to shut it down on her terms. Jasmine, exhausted but defiant, felt she had already gone too far to turn back now. Somewhere between truth, perception, and power, the lines continued to blur, and with every passing hour, the drama crept closer to a point of no return. The rumors about Mona speaking on camera spread faster than Jasmine expected, and by midday, everyone seemed to know it was coming. Phones rang nonstop, and the energy behind the scenes shifted from chaotic to surgical. This wasn't just gossip anymore, it felt like a countdown. Jasmine sat at her kitchen table, untouched coffee growing cold, refreshing her feed again and again as fans speculated about what Mona would say. Some were excited, others nervous, and many warned that this was the moment everything could flip. Emotions ran high as supporters argued over whether Mona's calm silence so far meant innocence or strategy. When the teaser finally dropped, it was subtle but devastating. No dramatic music, no flashy edits, just Mona seated in a neutral space, composed and unbothered. The caption read like a warning without sounding like one, promising clarity and context the public deserves. Jasmine felt her chest tighten as she watched the short clip on loop. "This is bad," she muttered. Her sister tried to reassure her, but even she couldn't hide the worry in her eyes. The family was left divided again, some urging Jasmine to stay quiet, others pushing her to speak louder before Mona's version became the only one people remembered. The full video dropped that evening, and within minutes, it dominated every platform. Mona spoke slowly, deliberately, addressing the situation without ever directly acknowledging Jasmine by name. She talked about opportunity, about mentorship, about the difference between feeling overlooked and being wronged. She referenced timelines, choices, and accountability, painting a picture that sounded reasonable and hard to argue with. Fans were shocked by how measured it was. Emotions ran high as many admitted they expected anger but got something far more unsettling: control. Jasmine watched the video in silence, tears sliding down her face as each sentence felt like a door closing. "She's rewriting me," she said quietly. Comments flooded in beneath Mona's video, praising her maturity and professionalism. Some former supporters of Jasmine openly apologized for doubting Mona. Others accused Jasmine of exaggerating, saying the facts didn't add up. The shift was palpable, and Jasmine felt it slipping through her fingers. The internet, once loud in her defense, now seemed to be turning. Desperate to regain footing, Jasmine went live again, but this time, the energy was different. Her voice wavered, frustration bleeding through every word. She accused Mona of gaslighting, of hiding behind polished language to dismiss real pain. "Just because you say it calmly doesn't mean it didn't happen," she insisted. But the comments were harsher now, questioning her consistency, pointing out contradictions. Emotions ran high as Jasmine tried to defend herself, but every explanation only seemed to invite more scrutiny. Behind the scenes, Mona's inner circle watched Jasmine's live with quiet confidence. "She's unraveling," one colleague whispered. Mona didn't respond, didn't even watch the full stream. She already knew the narrative was settling. Still, a part of her felt the weight of it all. "This isn't how I wanted it to go," she admitted later to a trusted friend. "But I won't be painted as something I'm not." Years in the industry had taught her that perception could be more powerful than truth, and she was determined to protect hers. As the days passed, fallout reached unexpected places. Brand deals paused, invitations disappeared. Jasmine noticed the silence where opportunities used to be. Friends she thought were solid stopped answering calls. The family was left divided yet again, with some relatives questioning whether the fight was worth the cost. Jasmine snapped back that she refused to be quiet just to stay comfortable, but alone at night, the doubt crept in. She wondered if she had underestimated the machine she was up against. Then, an old clip resurfaced, one Jasmine hadn't anticipated. It showed her years earlier praising Mona, thanking her for opportunities, calling her a mentor. Fans latched onto it instantly. "So what changed?" they asked. Jasmine tried to explain that gratitude and harm could coexist, but the internet wasn't interested in nuance. Emotions ran high as critics accused her of lying then or lying now. Either way, they said, she couldn't be trusted. Mona's response to the resurfaced clip was silence, and that silence spoke volumes. Bloggers framed it as validation, proof that Jasmine's story was falling apart under its own weight. Jasmine felt cornered, her voice drowned out by the growing consensus against her. "I feel like I'm screaming into nothing," she told her sister through tears. They already decided who to believe. Still, Jasmine wasn't ready to quit. She reached out to a journalist willing to listen, hoping a long-form interview would give her space to explain without interruption. The interview was intense, raw, and deeply personal. When it published, reactions were mixed. Some praised her vulnerability, saying it finally made sense. Others dismissed it as damage control. Fans were shocked by the level of detail she shared, and emotions ran high as people debated whether this was bravery or desperation. Mona read the interview late that night, her expression unreadable. She closed her laptop and leaned back, exhaling slowly. "This has gone far enough," she said softly. Plans were already in motion for what she considered the final word, something that would draw a clear line and end the speculation. Jasmine, unaware of what was coming, felt a fragile sense of hope that maybe, just maybe, the tide could still turn. But in this world, hope is often the calm before another storm. As both women prepared for their next moves, the fallout continued to spread, affecting people who never asked to be involved. Friendships strained, alliances shifted, and the love and hip-hop universe found itself questioning not just the drama, but the power dynamics behind it. The story was no longer just about Jasmine or Mona, it was about who gets heard, who gets believed, and what happens when those two things collide. The tension reached a breaking point when word leaked that Mona's final move wouldn't be a statement or an interview, but something far more calculated. Whispers spread that she was preparing to address everything through the one place where she held the most power, the platform she helped build. Fans were shocked when insiders hinted that the truth, or at least Mona's version of it, would be woven into upcoming footage in a way no tweet or video ever could. Emotions ran high as people debated whether that was genius or ruthless, and the family was left divided over whether it crossed an unspoken line. Jasmine felt the shift immediately. The tone online changed from speculation to anticipation, and that scared her more than outright attacks. "If she does this," Jasmine said to her sister, pacing the room, "I don't stand a chance." Her sister urged her to stay grounded, reminding her that public opinion could swing again, but Jasmine wasn't convinced. She had seen how quickly support turned into silence, and she knew she was running out of options. Desperation settled in, heavy and uncomfortable, pushing her toward choices she might not have made otherwise. Late one night, Jasmine reached out to a former castmate who had their own complicated history with the franchise. The conversation was cautious at first, both sides feeling each other out. "Do you think she's capable of burying someone like that?" Jasmine asked quietly. The response came after a long pause. "This industry doesn't bury people," the castmate replied. "It lets them bury themselves." Those words echoed in Jasmine's head long after the call ended, fueling both fear and defiance. Behind closed doors, Mona was finalizing her strategy with a precision that left little room for doubt. She wasn't interested in humiliation or public feuds. What she wanted was closure on her terms. "I'm not chasing her," she told her team. "I'm standing still and letting the noise pass." Still, even as she projected confidence, there were moments she questioned whether this would leave scars that couldn't be hidden. Power came with responsibility, and she was acutely aware of how every move would be judged. The first signs of the plan began to surface when cast members started reacting online in subtle ways. Cryptic posts, vague comments about loyalty and hard lessons, all pointing in the same direction without saying it outright. Fans immediately connected the dots. "They know something we don't," one comment read. Emotions ran high as viewers speculated about what was coming and who would be exposed in the process. The family was left divided once again, with some defending the right to tell one's story and others insisting that airing grievances publicly only created more damage. Jasmine tried to get ahead of it by releasing another video, this time calmer, more reflective. She spoke about growth, about speaking her truth without hatred, about wanting accountability rather than revenge. But the response was muted. The internet seemed tired, almost bored, and that hurt more than criticism. "They've moved on," Jasmine realized aloud, her voice breaking. The attention she once felt overwhelmed by was slipping away, and with it, her sense of control. As the days passed, pressure mounted from unexpected places. Legal warnings arrived, carefully worded and non-threatening but impossible to ignore. Friends advised her to stop talking publicly, warning that every word could be used against her. Jasmine felt trapped, torn between silence that felt like surrender and speaking out that felt increasingly risky. Emotions ran high as she weighed her options, knowing that any move could make things worse. Mona, on the other hand, appeared almost serene. Those close to her noticed a renewed focus, a return to routine that suggested she believed the storm was already passing. "Controversy burns fast," she told a colleague. "And then it's gone." Still, she kept a close eye on the fallout, aware that public memory could be unpredictable. She wasn't interested in winning a moment, she wanted to protect a legacy. Then came the leak that changed everything. An anonymous source released details of a behind-the-scenes meeting from years ago, one Jasmine had referenced vaguely but never fully explained. The account painted a picture far less dramatic than Jasmine's version, framing it as a misunderstanding rather than manipulation. Blogs jumped on it instantly, presenting it as the missing piece that explained the entire feud. Fans were shocked by how mundane it sounded compared to the explosive claims that started it all. Emotions ran high as many questioned whether the situation had ever warranted such public outrage. Jasmine felt blindsided. "That's not how it happened," she insisted, but her protests seemed to fall into a void. The more she tried to clarify, the more people accused her of backtracking. The family was left divided yet again, with even some of her closest supporters urging her to step back and protect herself. "You're hurting yourself," her sister said gently. Jasmine knew she was right, but admitting that felt like defeat. For Mona, the leak confirmed what she had suspected all along: time and patience were working in her favor. She didn't celebrate, didn't comment, didn't acknowledge it publicly. Her silence was now interpreted as strength rather than avoidance. Fans praised her restraint, calling it classy and professional. The narrative had shifted almost completely, and Jasmine could feel it slipping beyond her reach. Alone one evening, Jasmine scrolled through old photos and messages, reminders of when everything felt hopeful. She wondered if speaking out had been brave or reckless, necessary or premature. The line between those things blurred as exhaustion took hold. "I just wanted to be heard," she whispered into the empty room. Instead, she felt smaller than ever, overshadowed by a machine that kept moving forward without her. As the fallout settled into a new normal, both women faced the consequences in different ways. Mona continued forward, her position seemingly intact, her authority reinforced by the very controversy meant to challenge it. Jasmine, meanwhile, stood at a crossroads, forced to decide whether to keep fighting a battle that seemed unwinnable or step away and rebuild quietly. Emotions ran high in the background, even as public interest began to cool, and the family was left divided by questions that had no clear answers. Yet even as it appeared the storm was calming, there was an undercurrent of tension that refused to disappear. Unresolved feelings lingered, and unspoken truths hovered just beneath the surface. Those watching closely sensed that this story wasn't finished yet, that what looked like an ending might only be a pause before the next revelation. In the world they inhabited, silence was never final, and closure was always temporary. Even as public attention began to drift, the emotional aftermath refused to fade quietly. Jasmine woke up each morning with a knot in her stomach, scrolling through her phone out of habit even though she already knew what she would find. Fewer mentions, fewer comments, fewer people defending her. The noise that once overwhelmed her had thinned into a low, unsettling hum, and somehow that felt worse. Being attacked was painful, but being ignored felt like erasure. Emotions ran high in private, even as the public conversation cooled. Jasmine tried to reclaim some sense of normalcy. She went back to old routines, long walks, late-night journaling, voice notes she never posted. But everywhere she went, reminders followed. A stranger recognized her at a coffee shop and whispered to a friend. A former collaborator stopped replying to emails altogether. It became clear that the fallout wasn't just online, it was shaping how people saw her in real life. "I feel like I'm wearing a label I can't take off," she admitted to her sister one night. The family was left divided between encouraging her to keep pushing forward and urging her to step away for her own mental health. Behind the scenes, whispers continued, quieter but no less influential. Industry conversations shifted from whether Jasmine was right to whether she was worth the trouble. That phrase haunted her. She had wanted accountability, not exile, but the two seemed increasingly intertwined. A friend tried to reassure her, saying, "This will pass," but Jasmine wasn't sure what would be left when it did. Emotions ran high as she grappled with the realization that speaking out had changed her trajectory in ways she hadn't fully anticipated. Mona, meanwhile, began to feel the subtle aftershocks of the controversy in a different way. While her public image appeared steady, she noticed a shift in how people approached her. Some were more deferential than ever, careful with their words. Others seemed hesitant, guarded, as if unsure where they stood. Power, she realized, could isolate just as easily as it protected. "They think I'm untouchable now," she confided to a longtime friend. "That's not the same as being understood." Still, Mona refused to dwell on it. She immersed herself in work, focusing on new projects and future plans. Controversy, she believed, was best handled by momentum. Yet even she couldn't escape the lingering questions. Late at night, alone, she replayed conversations from years ago, wondering if there were moments she could have handled differently. Not because she believed Jasmine's accusations, but because leadership always carried blind spots. Emotions ran high internally, even as she maintained a composed exterior. The tension resurfaced unexpectedly when another former cast member hinted during a podcast that Jasmine's experience wasn't unique. The comment was vague, carefully worded, but enough to reignite speculation. Fans were shocked, and emotions ran high once more as clips circulated online. "Here we go again," Jasmine muttered when she saw it. Part of her felt vindicated, another part exhausted. She considered responding but hesitated, aware that jumping back into the fray could undo the fragile quiet she had managed to build. Mona's team monitored the reaction closely, prepared to intervene if necessary. But once again, Mona chose restraint. "Let it play out," she said. "Not every spark becomes a fire." Her confidence unsettled some and reassured others, reinforcing the perception that she was always several steps ahead. The family was left divided in the broader sense too, as viewers debated whether this was proof of a pattern or just another attempt to stay relevant. Jasmine watched the debate from a distance this time, choosing silence where she once would have spoken. It was a conscious decision, one that felt both empowering and painful. "I don't need to prove myself every time someone opens their mouth," she told her sister, though her voice wavered. Emotions ran high as she wrestled with the urge to defend her story against the instinct to protect her peace. Slowly, new opportunities began to appear, smaller and quieter than before but meaningful in their own way. A community panel invited her to speak about mental health and navigating public backlash. An independent project reached out, interested in her perspective beyond the drama. These moments reminded her that her voice still had value, even if it no longer dominated headlines. The family was left divided on whether she should accept them, but Jasmine felt a cautious sense of hope. Mona, observing from afar, acknowledged the shift as well. "Everyone finds their lane," she remarked during a private conversation. There was no malice in her tone, just a matter-of-fact acceptance. Still, the unresolved nature of the situation lingered. There had been no direct conversation, no private clearing of the air, and that absence left room for speculation to survive in the shadows. As months passed, the controversy became part of the show's mythology, referenced obliquely but never fully addressed again. Fans debated it like a case with missing evidence, each side convinced they understood the truth. Emotions ran high whenever it resurfaced, proving that even dormant drama could be reawakened with the right trigger. The family was left divided not by active conflict but by lingering interpretation. One evening, Jasmine received an unexpected message from someone connected to Mona's circle. It wasn't an apology or an accusation, just a brief note acknowledging the difficulty of the situation and wishing her well. Jasmine stared at the screen for a long time before responding. She didn't know if it meant anything significant, but it felt like a crack in a wall she thought was solid. "Maybe this is as close to closure as it gets," she said quietly. That message stayed with her, prompting reflection rather than reaction. She began to see the situation less as a battle to be won and more as a chapter that had already reshaped her. Emotions ran high as she accepted that some stories don't end cleanly, that being heard doesn't always mean being believed, and that moving forward sometimes means letting go of the need for validation. For Mona, the chapter settled into the background of a long career marked by controversy and success alike. She understood that no amount of silence or statements could completely erase doubt, just as no accusation could dismantle everything she had built. Legacy, she knew, was never singular. It was a collection of perceptions, contradictions, and moments people chose to remember. As both women moved forward on separate paths, the space between them remained charged with what had been said and what never would be. The story no longer dominated headlines, but it lived on in fragments, in comments, in debates that flared up whenever old clips resurfaced. Emotions ran high in quieter ways now, less explosive but deeply ingrained. And though it seemed like the drama had finally settled, those closest to the situation sensed that one final shift remained. Unresolved questions have a way of resurfacing when least expected, and in a world built on visibility and voice, silence itself can become the loudest statement of all. After everything you've just heard, one thing is clear: this story is far from simple. What started as a single viral video turned into a full-blown clash of power, perception, and legacy, and now the question isn't just who was right or wrong, but what it all really means. You've seen how quickly support can turn into silence, how emotions ran high on both sides, and how the family was left divided in ways that may never fully heal. Some fans walked away more convinced than ever, others more confused, and many are still sitting with unanswered questions that refuse to go away. You watched Jasmine step forward believing her voice deserved to be heard, only to learn how unforgiving the spotlight can be. You watched Mona Scott Young stand firm, choosing strategy over spectacle, and reminding everyone why her name still carries so much weight in the industry. But here's the real question you have to ask yourself. In a world built on reality TV, is the truth ever really just one thing? Or is it shaped by who holds the mic, who controls the platform, and who knows when to stay silent? Fans are shocked not just by what was said, but by what was never said. There was no explosive face-to-face, no dramatic apology, no clear winner. Instead, there was distance, power, and consequences that played out quietly but deeply. And maybe that's what makes this story hit harder than most. Because real drama doesn't always end with a scream. Sometimes it ends with people moving on in opposite directions, carrying their own version of the truth. Now it's your turn. After hearing everything, whose side are you really on? Do you believe Jasmine was brave for speaking up, even when the odds were stacked against her? Or do you think Mona did exactly what a seasoned executive should do when her name and legacy were challenged? Or maybe you feel like the truth lives somewhere in the middle, messy and unresolved, where most real stories actually exist. This is where you come in. Scroll down and let your voice be heard. Drop a comment and tell us what you think really happened behind the scenes. Did power play the biggest role here, or did timing and emotion change everything? If you were in Jasmine's position, would you have spoken out, knowing the cost? And if you were in Mona's shoes, would you have handled it any differently? And if you made it this far, you already know this channel is where the real conversations happen. Make sure you like this video if you want more deep dives into the drama that everyone else is afraid to talk about. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story that shakes the culture, because trust us, this universe never stays quiet for long. New twists, new revelations, and new voices are always waiting in the wings. Remember, stories like this don't end when the headlines fade. They live on in discussions like this, in the comments, in the debates you have with friends, and in the questions that stick with you long after the screen goes dark. So stay locked in, stay curious, and stay ready, because if there's one thing love and hip-hop has taught us, it's that silence is never the end, it's just the pause before the next reveal. Eyes.